Alright, so what's up everybody? I'm going to try to be real quick here because I'm not going very far, but I wanted to talk about how did I get to the KLR. So not really like a 3 reasons challenge, I've never done one of them, but history if you will. So I'll throw a few pictures in where I can. I probably don't have, I know I don't have a picture of everything, but I've probably got pictures of a decent amount of it. I scrunch up. So anyway, I started riding when I was 6. That would have been my birthday, which was in August of 92 when I was born, so it would have been 98, August of 98. I got my first bike. It was a 96 model. It was a 96 model. 1996 Honda Z50. I rode the absolute wheels off that thing. I think my dad bought it from a car dealership. A little used car lot it was sitting at for like $300, which is pretty good because a 2-year-old 50 these days, they've went from like $1,000 up to $1,500 new, and a 2-year-old one somebody still wants $1,000 for. So rode the wheels off that thing for a couple of years, and then it got stolen. Went to a little league baseball game to play, came back home, was going to get back on my motorcycle, wasn't there. So it got stolen, and it was about time to upgrade anyway. So my old man got me a XR80. It was a 2002. So I kept that bike a good while, at least in the 50, at least until 2001. So 3 years. From the time I was 6 to the time I was 9, roughly. Got a brand new 2002 model XR80. Didn't have that bike very long. With the slightly bigger bike came much bigger jumps, mainly due to the fact that it had something bigger than 10-inch wheels. So that bike lasted like maybe a year max. Sold it, and my dad scored a 1990 model CR80. And back then, to my knowledge, there wasn't like an expert and a non-expert like there was later on in the 90s. They were all big wheels. So it ran a 16-19 combo or something like that. It wasn't a small wheel 80. And that 1990 was just before a big emissions hit, because I always remember how that bike pissed off the neighbors more than the CR250 I had a few years later. And it was because it was about 3 times as loud. And cause I remember I always wanted to put like a FMF pipe on it. My dad was like, no, it makes more power with the stock pipe, because 1990 to now there's a huge difference in emission laws. And he was probably right. And he just didn't want to spend any money, because at the time I was still, I don't know, like 10. So anyway, rode out the CR80 for many a year racing. That's the bike I got into racing on. So between racing and riding with friends, went through a lot on that bike. Went through, I don't know, 1 fork rebuild. Went through 4 or 5 engine rebuilds, top end. Never split the case on the bottom. Put a ton of hours on that bike and loved every minute of it. And then that was the last bike my dad ever bought me. So 11 years old, 10 years old, somewhere around there. That was the last bike my dad ever bought me. So I sold that XR or a CR80 for $500. I'd been cutting the neighbor's grass and my grandparents' grass and some other people's grass, and been slowly saving money over time. And I found the guy up the road that had a CR250. I think he was asking $1,500. I think I ended up paying him like $1,300. It was a 99 model. I was not old enough to drive, because I remember my grandmother drove me over there to test ride it and look at it. I would have been maybe 15 at max, maybe. So anyway, had that CR250, kept that thing, let's say I got it when I was 15, kept that thing for at least 3 years, and rode it hard and put it up wet too. Blew out a front dampening rod bolt on the front fork. Went through 3 top ends before the last top end. When it blew, it completely ruined the cylinder. And what happened after that? I bought the cylinder head off of a 98 model. Somebody was parting out. I got it running. It was leaking coolant, and I was tired of fooling with it, so I sold it. Now, by this time, I'm old enough to be working, driving. I would be 17-ish, 18-ish, somewhere in there. And this story is going to have a part 2, because I'm at my destination. And we're back. So, where did I leave off? CR250. So, yeah, got rid of that thing. What happened after that? KTM 250SX motocross bike. I didn't keep that very long. I was working too many hours to get back into racing. I raced a few times and then come to the realization I didn't have enough time when I was working every weekend to justify trying to go race every weekend. So, by this time, I'm around 18, just graduating high school. I get a 1972 Honda CB350-4, the inline 4-cylinder version. It came in a twin and it came in an inline 4. I had the inline 4. It was all original, like 5,200 miles. I was going to take it and hack it up into like a custom little cafe racer, and I couldn't do it. It was in too nice a shape. So sold it, kept it maybe a few months, put a couple hundred miles on it, sold it, and got a DRZ 400. This would have been a brand new 2011 model. I probably bought it. It was probably 2012. I kept it for a decent time, but not a whole lot of miles, like maybe 14 to 1,500 miles, and maybe 8 months to a year, which I was doing a little bit more off-roading than I was road riding with it, so it kind of takes a while to rack up 1,500 off-road miles. So, let's see what happened after that. Got rid of that and regretted it. So I was going to get another one. Dealership didn't have another one. I was an impatient teenager. So I was like, alright, I will get what else you got. Which it was a 2012 KLX 250. And then regretted not waiting for them to get a DRZ 400 in, or just going to another dealership, because it didn't really quite have the punch I was looking for at the time, which I was used to with the DRZ 400. And but then shortly after having it, a handful of my buddies all got Harleys. So I was like, alright, well, if I'm going to be riding with y'all, I can't be doing it on Deal Sport. So at the time I had a Raptor 700 four-wheeler, and the KLX 250. And meanwhile, while all of this, the entire time I was a teenager, I was buying and selling like dirt bikes and four-wheelers like crazy. Not so much four-wheelers, I can probably count all the four-wheelers I had, but dirt bikes, no telling how many mini bikes I'd buy and sell that somebody had bought for their grandson, and then years later it's still sitting in their garage, and I'd buy it for $200, get it running, and sell it for $400 or $500. No less than half a dozen of those over those teenage years. So bikes were coming and going, but as far as bigger bikes and road going bikes, It was DRZ 400, KLX 250. So then I sold the KLX 250 and the Raptor 700 four-wheeler to get a Harley. I got this would have been around 2012 to 2013, and I got a 06 Harley 883C Sportster. This is a custom, nothing custom about it, it's just like every other custom that rolls off Harley's showroom floor. But it was the C version. It was used, 06 model, had 332 miles, if I'm trying to remember very exactly. So 330 miles. Somebody had midlife crisis. I want a Harley, went to the Harley dealership, said, holy crap, I can't afford many of these bikes. What's the cheapest thing you got? An 883 Sportster C. I'll take it, and then never rode it. Realized it wasn't for them, kind of thing. And at some point dropped it. I think they dropped it, but they actually probably dropped it not on the ground, but into like a wall or something, because the lever was bent, but nothing on that side of the bike that would have hit the ground had a slight scratch on it. So I take it somebody bought it thinking they wanted it, needed it, and didn't really want it or need it that badly, and then traded it in on like a jet ski for their grandkids. So had the Harley for 1 year, 9,000 miles. And then at this time, all of my buddies are still riding. More of my buddies are getting bikes and getting bikes. And so I was like, alright, if I'm going to keep riding like this, I want something bigger than a Sportster. So I got a 2012, went and bought it brand new. Had to save up pretty much the whole time I had the Sportster to be able to go afford it. But I just got my first machinist job, and I'm still living at home. So for all intents and purposes, I was making bank, considering I had no bills. And so saved up for that year while I was riding it, and ended up buying a 2012 Victory cross country. They had to order it. I learned from my DRZ 400 KLX 250 mistake, being impatient, waited on them to order the next to last one, because 2013 they didn't do that color. And whenever my local dealer called to try to get one, they was like, yeah, we've got 3 left, and one of them's being shipped out now, so we technically have 2 left. And they were like, well, we need one of them for a customer. So I got the next to the last, supposedly, allegedly, the next to the last cross country that came off in 2012 that was nuclear sunset orange. And had that bike for 3 years, 20,000 miles, 18,800 and change to be exact, somewhere in there. And then I bought the KLR. So that is how we ended up with a 2014 KLR 650. By the time I got around to buying this bad boy, I was in, let's see, it was 2016. The guy that owned the dealership, it was his personal bike, but he had like 6 personal bikes, and every year he would like get a new one and sell another one, and you know, must be nice. It was his personal bike. He had nothing done to it but the California Specialties windscreen that I'm actually giving away when I hit 100 subscribers. We still ain't hit 100. And it had 800 miles on it. So I picked it up, sold the Victory, never looked back. Okay, it's the next day, but when editing this video, I need to script my stuff. I glossed over, didn't even mention a couple of noteworthy machines. One noteworthy, probably only in my eyes. But after buying the KLR, I can throw a picture of it in, but I just forgot to mention it for whatever reason. After buying the KLR and having it for a couple years, 2 years, I went back and got a brand new 2017 Versys 650 and was going to sell the KLR. Actually, I had the KLR sold and was slightly disappointed in the Versys. It's a great bike, but I was still like, I'd went out on it a couple times, and I just passed up dirt roads because the 16-inch wheels front and back. I was like, I could do it, but it's such a nice bike, brand new, and so I was like, man, I can't. I'm gonna be passing up too many dirt roads, and at the time, I wasn't ready to give that up. So, and my wife didn't care for it because of the hump in the seat between the driver and the passenger. It's kind of tall, kind of like that cross rocket seating difference, and so she was up really high, and which isn't a problem if the air is clean, but it was real unclean air and buffeted her helmet a lot. And I tried lowering the windscreen all the way, raising it all the way, didn't do any good. Undid the mounts, flipped them over, done something funny with them, I remember, and got the tracks above the mount and raised it like another 3 inches, and she still didn't like it, still wasn't good. So I think it was just the combination of not having an aftermarket screen that was big enough, combined with maybe my position and seating, is like no matter what I did with the windscreen, it didn't affect her head buffeting issue. So anyway, I didn't mean for this to turn into a ramble about the Versys 650. I had one, I put 1,500 miles on it in a month, and then I listed it for sale and I sold it. What else was noteworthy? Oh yeah, while I had the Victory cross country, I had an incident on it, like a mile from my house. It wasn't a mile from my house, but it was like close. I wasn't far from home at all. And out of all the miles I put on it, 20,000 miles nearly, and all the riding all over the southeast we done on it, it was like the biggest damage that ever happened to the bike was like at home. So I was like real pissed there for a short time. And I was like, I'm going to get something that I can work on, tinker with, without costing an arm and a leg, like it would the Victory, to customize. And then I can just ride around here close. So like when I'm going to get my hair cut, or I'm riding to my now wife's house, at the time girlfriend's house, and we're not planning on going for a ride, and ride it, or whatever. So I bought this cheap used. It was real nice though, condition-wise, Honda Rebel 250. Everyone knows what a Honda Rebel 250 looks like stock, and then this is what I turned it into. I was very proud of that. It took a good bit of work. Nothing like crazy custom like hacksaw the frame work, but I mean it was, it envisioned that, and I never saw. It's like hard to see one just like it. Like you're not going to see one similar. And the picture I have of it that I just showed you isn't even. It didn't even when the bike was done. It was a few more things happened to it after that. I got more compliments out of that bike at gas stations pumping gas than I got out of the Victory while I was as well sitting in a gas station pumping gas. Like little kids for some reason loved that bike. I guess because I ran no rear fender on it. I'd made a custom mount for a rear fender, and I had a rear fender, but I never got it painted, so I never put it on. And for some reason kids love the piss out of that bike. Like, I don't know if maybe it was just like it looked like more of a playful bike, so people would actually talk to you, whereas like kids was afraid to talk to me if I was sitting there on the Victory and they walked by me. I don't know, but in my eyes, that's a noteworthy bike. But for some reason, I glossed right over them two, mainly the Versys. So I wanted to bring that to you. So that's how I ended up here. I know the 3R challenge we learned how a lot of everyone else ended up here, but that's how I did.